Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, I'm calling your name. Oh Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another live episode of Let's Talk on your favorite channel, Huda TV. I'm your host, Arkham Rashid. On tonight's episode, we want to discuss a very crucial topic that afflicts Muslims and non-Muslims alike, which is depression and suicidal thoughts. Many times we find that in the Muslim community, mental health is completely ignored. So we want to start this conversation with you guys and hope that more conversations like this will occur in your local communities and worldwide, inshallah. So let's start off by welcoming and introducing our panel for today. On my right hand side, sir, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Yusuf Kroma. I'm from Philadelphia, PA. I'm a writer, an author, an activist, aspiring student of knowledge, inshallah.
All right, Yusuf, welcome back to the show. You were on with me last week, and we had a wonderful conversation, so I'm looking forward to this one as well. It's a pleasure. Next to him, brother, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm Ahmed Muhammad Munir. I'm studying in Faculty of Languages and Translation at the University. The third year for me after the preliminary one. I'm 21 years old. I'm turning 22 in a couple of weeks, inshallah. And I'm an English instructor, and pleasure to be with you here, inshallah.
All right, Ahmed, this is the first time we're having you on the show, so welcome to Huda and welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you.
If I can come over to this side, brother, if you can give us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself. Go ahead.
My name is Idris, and I'm from the States, America, from Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, close to you. And I'm here teaching English, but mainly learning Arabic and memorizing Quran.
All right, Idris, I know you so well that I can actually introduce you myself and the brother next to you as well.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you on as well. Brother next to him, if we can get your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Omar Khalid, I'm an Egyptian citizen. I work in translation and writing scripts for TV programs.
All right, Omar, it's wonderful to have you on again. Like I said, I can introduce this side of the panel. I know you guys off the back of my head. We're on every week almost, inshallah. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, guys. What I want to start off with is Islam's look at suicide and depression and suicidal thoughts. We're going to start with the religious aspect of it, kind of, and then let's get into the social aspect of it. So Yusuf, if you can start us off today, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Firstly, it is understood from Sharia that suicide is something that's not allowed in the religion of Islam. You know, we are told to have hope in Allah. We are told to believe in the qadr, that la yukallifu Allah nafsan illa wus'aha, that Allah will not place upon you a burden that you cannot bear. So anything that happens to you in your life is from the perfection of Allah's plan, and He knows you, He knows your situation, and He is a just and a merciful God. So it's understood in Islam that suicide is not something that we accommodate, is not something that that we allow in Islam.
Okay, Ahmed, I'm going to come over to you to ask you your thoughts about that. But before I do that, dear viewers, I want to remind you that you can call into the show because this is a live program. And if you do not want to call, you can also message us on Facebook. And we have Facebook open here. And we will receive your message on air and we will answer it for you as well as we can, inshallah. So Ahmed, coming back to you. Islam's view on suicide and depression.
Yes, speaking of Islam and hope in Islam, of course Islam has given us everything that makes us hopeful in life and not to despair of the relief from Allah, the Almighty Allah. If we look at Islam, it tells us that everything that happens to you is good for you, whether good or bad. As the Prophet ﷺ was narrated about him when he said, how wonderful the case of a believer is. Whatever there is good in whatever happens to him, and this is only for the believer. If prosperity happens to him, he thanks Allah, he expresses gratitude to the Almighty Allah, and this is good for him. And if adversity befalls him, and he endures it patiently, and this is good for him. So whatever happens to you is good for you, so there's no chance to despair of the relief of Allah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Inshallah, we're going to come back and get into the social aspects of this. I'm going to come over to this side of the panel. Just same thing, a general idea of Islam's look towards suicide and depression and suicidal thoughts.
It's like the brother said, they've pretty much summed it up. But I would say that to add to that, that it's really it's haram. It's frowned upon. It's a big sin, and it's something that it shows that a person is doesn't have patience It doesn't...
That's suicide itself, not the thoughts.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or isn't understanding the reality of the qadr of Allah, and that whatever is happening to them, that they can take it. They just need to find, well, we'll talk about that later on, remedies and things to do to understand how to deal with it. Because Allah says you can, you just have to figure out how.
Okay, Umar, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts on that is that the attribute of the disbeliever is that he despairs. And there's a verse in the Quran, in Surah Yusuf. It's describing that the disbelievers, they are only people who are having this despair. But believers, they don't have this complete despair. Maybe sometimes you can have negative thoughts, of course, because we are human beings, but not to the extent of just thinking about like there is no light at the end of the tunnel and everything is going to be gloomy and there is no way out. And the way out of this religiously is to notice the attributes of Allah. We know that Allah is all-powerful. So if I think that I don't have the means to get outside of this overwhelming situation, or my life is so hard, I have to think not of my power, not about everything around me, about circumstances and so on. Allah can change everything in a moment.
Okay, now basically suicidal thoughts occur when there is, when basically you lose, or there is no feeling of belonging or being able to cope with maybe a financial situation or the death of somebody that was close to you, somebody that you love. You know, these type of events lead to suicidal thoughts and suicide and just depression in general. So, in your opinion, how could somebody prevent thoughts like these?
Firstly, as someone that's not, clinically trained in, human psychology, and also someone that has not been pushed to the brink of wanting to commit suicide or having suicidal thoughts, I can only offer, my opinion in a limited view. That being said, I'm not a stranger of the darkness. I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia, in like the inner city, where there was violence, there was murder, there was alcoholism, there was gambling, there was poverty, there was suffering. There was just all around suffering. So I understand what it is to be in a place of despair and a place of hopelessness, and to to not have hope, to feel that sentiment. And wallahi, growing up in that sort of environment, the only thing that saved me, that kept me alive spiritually, that kept me alive mentally, and perhaps even physically, was the hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To know that Allah is all merciful, that Allah is all knowing, that He knows me, that He knows my condition, and He knows my situation. Knowing that, it gave me the hope to aspire to move on to another day. Also, being in the company of good people, people that uplift you, people that, offer some good words. But, unfortunately, sometimes if you're in the Islamic community and you have these thoughts and these ideas, you'll find people very harsh and cold. Brother, I'm feeling depressed. You need to make salat. You need to remember Allah. You need to pay zakat, all right? Your iman is low. It really is a natural human condition for somebody to be up and down. So I think when you're feeling depressed, it's as if you're in a hole, right? And as the Muslim has the tools to get outside of the hole. But the deeper you sink in the hole, the more hopeless you become. So certain times people may have the tools. As a Muslim, we know Allah, we have the Prophet ﷺ, but if you don't know how to use the tools appropriately and efficiently, and you're not used to using those tools, you may not get out of the hole, right? Even if you have the tools. Now for someone who doesn't believe in God, don't have any tools at all, you go directly to the bottom of the hole and you keep on sinking because you don't have any tools at all. So for the Muslim, the tools are to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remember His perfect attributes, and to remember the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as he in his own life went through times of trials and tribulations where even he, to a certain degree, had despair in his life. And he was the perfect example of what a human being is supposed to be in this world.
Very interesting. Something I found interesting that you mentioned was that many times when somebody has these sort of mental issues, and they go to a community leader or the imam and they tell them, okay, you have to pray, you have to do something religious in order for you to remove this. But it's a two-sided problem. I mean, it's not just a religious or a spiritual side missing. It's also that the person might actually have mental issues and trouble. We're going to get to the spiritual aspect of this, but before that, I want to continue this specific question, which is, How do you prevent such thoughts? So if somebody is having suicidal thoughts, what's a good way for him to prevent that?
Believing in predestination, of course, as you've mentioned, that's why Allah has made it a pillar of your face. When Jibril came to the Prophet Muhammad and asked him about Iman, he said, is to believe in Allah, His Messenger, His books, and predestination, whether good or bad. So if you believe in predestination, and you know that what was meant to you will reach you, and what misses you was never meant to you, this will make you relieved. And whenever you're relieved, you can think positively. And when you can think positively, you can think everything easily. Speaking of, for example, some problems like financial problems, you can look at the Almighty Allah when He says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ, will test you something of fear and hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنْفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and loss of wealth, children, lives, and fruits. So you can return to Allah at anything, and we can help you with this. We can help you with this, of course. And it's natural, and Islam gives us many examples of the Quran that if we follow, we'll find that it's easily solved. For example, if we look at, as Brother Omar said, Nabiullah Yaqub, the Prophet Yaqub, when they told him about his son that he was eaten by the wolf, he did not despair, of course, because he knows that this is the way of life. He just said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, patience is the most fitting. After that, he started relying on the Almighty Allah, and he said, عَسَى اللَّهُ أَنْ يَأْتِيَنِ بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا, may Allah bring them all together to me. After that, he started to have an action. This is the most important, to have an action, not just rely on Allah, but you have to have an action. He said, يَا بَنِيَّ اذْهَبُوا فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِنْ يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ, oh my sons, go and find out about Yusuf and his brother, وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ, and just don't despair of the relief from Allah, because as he said, إِنَّهُ لَا يَأْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ, no one can despair from the relief of Allah except those disbelieving people. So no one despair from the relief of Allah except disbelieving people. So you have to rely on Him and to have an action toward that, and that will help you, inshallah.
Yeah. And that's very good that you mentioned that you have to do something about it as well. It's because sabr is two parts. It's patience and perseverance. It's not that you're just patient with whatever happens, it's that you continue and strive to do whatever you can to the best of your ability. Idris, I want to come over to you with the same question. What's your thoughts on that? How can you prevent such thoughts?
I think I would add on to what he said about qadr.
Sure.
Is also understanding that things are qadr, but also knowing that you need to build upon your yaqeen. You can believe in qadr, but if you don't have yaqeen, you don't have certainty in your belief, then you're going to waver. You're going to ride the waves of trying to understand and maybe being lost. And how you build yaqeen is through knowledge. We all have different things that may touch your heart. Each one is individual. This is something that someone who's specialized in this can do better than me, is finding out exactly what will help you have yaqeen, because everything's different for everyone. But this is also, I look at one of the key traits that the Sahaba had that made them so successful, was the fact that no one could tell them anything different. You couldn't come to them and tell them anything. They believed from the bottom of their soul and heart that everything that Rasulullah said was the truth. Nowadays, people will say something and they find it and, I don't know about that. This is Rasulullah. Like, for instance, the hadith about the fly, dip it in. And some people to this day, well, I don't know about that. They're quick to judge, and they don't have the quick submission. Why? Because they haven't reached that certainty yet. Once you've reached it, obeying is easy. You don't even have the issue of this type of thoughts going through your head. Also, when you have yaqeen, then you'll understand the hadith the ayah, the Quran, when Allah says that you will never get anything you can't bear. If you believe in, you have certainty in this, then you'll start building yourself. Of course, you still may become depressed. This is human, but you can start building upon this pillar through that.
Okay, Umar, I'm going to come to you as well. What's your thoughts on this?
Okay. I just wanted to just talk about it from a different dimension.
Sure.
It's about a book. It was written about maybe 2013. It's called Depression Cure.
Okay.
It was written by a clinical psychologist in the United States of America. No torturing. I know that my brother is just waiting for the...
After he conducted some experiments.
It's so peaceful.
Shock experience?
Well, the main message of the book is that we live in, not in a balanced life. We don't live in the right way. Like, for instance, he gave examples that we don't sleep well. For instance, we sleep little less than we should do because of the workload and because of the rat race and so on. That is not something trivial. That actually is affecting the circadian rhythm, which is related to some of the main like organs and the working of them inside our bodies. So maybe if somebody doesn't sleep for just 2 weeks, doesn't sleep so well, he's going to feel depressed. He's going to have negative thoughts, and he will think that, oh, it's because of my gloomy life, but it's not because of this. He just has to like fix his way of life. This is one pillar, for instance, and he talked about also not working out, not moving, because look at the past. Maybe from 100 years from now, we used to go to the field, we used to move around. It's not normal. What you're doing, like sitting on desks and offices, that's not the way that we are created for, to just sit still. So at least we have to move around like 3 times a week, and so on and so forth. One of the things that he alluded to is to expose yourself to the sun. Most of the time you are inside our homes, we don't go out, so we have to expose ourselves to the sun to feel normal and so on. So in conclusion, what I want to say is that we have to live normally.
Yeah, there's some physical aspects to it as well to get rid of depression. That's a very good point, actually. Another thing is that sometimes we stress ourselves for no reason. And I remember in one of the books I read, it was about how to get rid of stress. The author explains that many times you can switch a situation completely. So, for example, he gave a very good example that you're going to work, or you're going anywhere, let's say, and you're stuck in traffic. Now, I know in Cairo the traffic is really bad. So say you're stuck in traffic, you will be stuck in that traffic, whether you like it or not. You're going to be sitting there for 1 hour, right? Now, you can be sitting there for 1 hour and feel depressed and, start getting a headache, like, oh man, I've been sitting here for so long, how long is this traffic going to take, how long is it? Or you can just relax. Relax your nerves. You're going to be sitting there anyway. Start making plans for later on. Just be very calm. Don't let the traffic control your emotions, and don't let the traffic control your thoughts and stress you out. Right? So, the author said that you can switch each and every situation just like that. So that was an example of traffic. But there's so many situations in our life where we feel stressed because of a certain position that we're in. But we have the capability to flip that.
Point of view.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that is that I knew someone who had the same situation, exactly what you mentioned, and they turned it around to a positive. So since they had to travel to work for a long distance, like an hour every day, and there's no way around it, they decided that they would start memorizing Quran on the way. Within a year and a half, they ended up finishing the whole Quran.
Wow.
Because believe it or not, you have so much time on your hands that you don't realize that you waste it. They turned this wasted time and frustration into a positive aspect, and it benefited them.
Okay. And something that I mentioned earlier was that a person might be facing some sort of bad event, or some sort of a bad event, or some sort of
like a shock or something.
Like a shock or something that destroyed his life, kind of. A trauma. He lost somebody that he loved. He is financially screwed, we can say, right? Something might happen to him. But what about somebody who's the exact opposite, who has all the money in the world, who has no stress in his life, but is still depressed? Do you think there's a spiritual aspect to this as well? Because we spoke about, okay, what if somebody loses a loved one, now he's depressed, or somebody lost his job and lost, financially, lost, all of his wealth. But what about somebody in the exact opposite? Somebody's rich and he has all the money in the world. Yusuf, let's start with you. What's your thoughts on this? Is there a spiritual aspect that's...
SubhanAllah, it's always a spiritual aspect. And I want to firstly say, Sadaqallah al-Azim, as the brother was speaking, and he mentioned a lack of sleep and a lack of sunlight. And he said that was some sort of, from a psychological book. But I read this in the Quran. The first time I became aware of this was in Surah Al-Duha, when I learned about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And after he received the first wahi, there was a long period of time where Jibreel didn't come and visit him. And he became so sad. He thought he did something wrong. He lost his connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for this individual, he doesn't have a connection with his Creator. He doesn't have a connection with his purpose. So it's always going to create this sort of discomfort, this sort of purposelessness, hopelessness. What am I doing here? I have all this money, I have health, but I don't have any purpose. So what did Allah ta'ala say to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The first thing that revealed was, وَالضُّحَى, by the shining day, by the sunlight, right? And that's one of the signs of a person that's depressed. They always isolate themselves. They're always in the house. They close all the windows. They cover themselves. And they're always in complete darkness, right? وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا Sajda, right? So Allah Ta'ala made the night as a place of peace for us. So the person who's depressed, they never sleep at night. They're awake all night long, right? And then they sleep during the day. So their entire life is as if it's always night. There's no sunlight for the person because during the day they're sleeping. At nighttime they're awake. So their whole life is complete darkness. So you mentioned those two things to me that's mentioned by psychologists, but Allah Ta'ala is the best psychologist because He created the human being. So He knows what duha wa layli idha saja ma wada'aka rabbuka wa ma qala, and know that your Lord has not forsaken you, that Allah is always with you. But if you don't know who your Creator is, if you don't know what your purpose is, of course you can have all the money in the world, of course you can have the children, of course you can have everything, and that will just be a means of your destruction, a means of your sadness. Because you'll have all this money, you'll lose friends. You'll have children, they'll disobey you. You'll have a beautiful wife, but you're jealous, and she's looking at other men and things like this. So the only thing that would give you sakina, that would give you comfort, is knowing Allah.
SubhanAllah.
SubhanAllah. No, I just felt that in my heart, man. You gave me chill bumps, so I had to, mention that, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Dear viewers, we're going to go for a short break. As soon as we come back, we will continue our conversation, so stay tuned.
How perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah. How perfect you are, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sheikh, I was wondering, can I ask you a question?
Be my guest.
Can I make ijtihad on my own? Is takfir an Islamic concept? Are Salafis a sect? Do I have to give da'wah to people? And is interfaith dialogue haram?
Akhi, this is not one question. These are important topics and issues that require we sit and discuss them, inshallah, thoroughly.
Actually, why don't you guys join us for these discussions on contemporary Islamic issues and concepts?
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was here today.
This is the Deen Show. 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 This is the Deen Show.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Deen Show. From time to time, we answer some of your questions. We have so many important issues that we're dealing with here on the Deen Show, and we encourage you to come back here every week. And if you don't catch us on the TV station, you can go to thedeenshow.com where all of our shows are there.
It is important for us when we look at the issue of holiday myths that we look at the whole picture. And from the beginning of time, people worshipped the Creator in different ways. The Quran tells us in the chapter of the Bee, Surah An-Nahl, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ.
Maryam, how are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Thank you for being with us on the Deen Show.
You're welcome.
So how old are you again?
I'm 8 years old.
I didn't want to get that wrong. 8 years old. And you've memorized how many juz of the Quran?
I memorized 21 juz from the Quran.
21 juz. MashaAllah.
As you know that there is no concept of clergyman in Islam.
There isn't?
There is not.
Okay.
And this idea is supposed to be very liberating. Nobody comes between you and your Creator.
Okay.
You do not need an operator. It's a direct call. So Islam rejects the whole notion of clergyman. So a sheikh, imam is a title that is given to a person like myself when the community feels that you're worthy of it. And it's just a title out of respect.
This is the Deen Show. This is the Deen Show. This is the Deen Show. Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. Now, before we went for that short break, we were speaking about the spiritual void that could lead to depression. And Brother Yusuf gave us a wonderful answer right before that break. Ahmed, I want to come to you. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think there's a spiritual connection to depression?
Yes, of course. If you just sit like a little bit with yourself and think of the problem and think of your purpose of life, what Allah has created you for, you'll find out that you're here just to worship Allah. And if you think of that, there is no way to despair, because He guarantees your provision for you, guarantees everything for you. Whatever comes from you, just worship Allah, and He'll get you whatever you want. In addition, if you look, as Brother Yusuf said, وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى, the hereafter is better for you than this, than the world. And of course, some people have wealth, but he said you may have wealth, but you use it in a bad way. It may be bad for you, but even if it's good for you, and you have the children that they are obedient for you, and everything is good for you, but you feel depressed, this means that you're far away from your Lord. As Allah the Almighty said, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, whoever turns away from my remembrance, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ, he will have a depressed life. So you'll find the reason that you're away from your Lord, and you have to go back to this. You have to go back to the Almighty Allah. And some people say, whenever I try to get back to Allah, I find it difficult, because I try to get back to Him and I start to make everything good for 2 days, 3 days. After that, I start to retreat. No one helps me. I start to be disappointed. But the best solution for that is to team up with your friends, team up with some group, to work in groups, and this is easily for you. It make it easy for you. For example, I had a similar experience to that. I felt that I'm away from Allah. I try to get back, but it's difficult for me. Whenever I try, I retreat back. So I gathered my friends and said, why are we away from the Almighty Allah? We have to get back to Him. They helped me. They had the same problem with me. So we decided together to get over this, to get this over and to overcome it. And nowadays, alhamdulillah, they helped me a lot to get back to the Almighty Allah. And I started to have a better life than before, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, I'm going to come over to the side to you, Idris. What's your thoughts on this? Sometimes, we find people that have everything, anything a person could wish for, but the person is so depressed. What's missing here?
I think they've pretty much nailed it on the head, is that when you leave the remembrance of Allah, Allah told you this, you're going to have a miserable life. I personally have known people who are very wealthy. I have known people that are millionaires, and they're not happy. They're searching for something, and they don't realize that what they're searching for is Islam. It's the natural inclination within you. Allah put it in you for a reason, to drive you, to give you comfort, to give you the contentment, is to build a relationship with Him. When you don't try to build a relationship with Him, you fail. No matter what you do, you're going to fail. You're always going to feel that everything will be temporary. It's like the as we used to have in America, we used to have the crack problem. The crackhead would always seek this one high, trying to find a high that he would never find again. You're seeking it but you'll never find it again. It's the same thing for people who do things in life, whether it be they're rich, whether it be their sports, whether it be whatever entertainment they're doing. They will never reach that high again that you were at one point. Because Allah takes it from you. There's no barakah in it without remembering Allah. So,
and even the remembrance of Allah, like dhikr itself, there's an iman rush or an iman high that you can constantly reach for again and again. And but with this case, you can actually feel it again and again. Every time you're on that, your highest level of iman, you feel good and you feel like
there is no stopping this. There's no plateau when you start having khushu and start really developing a relationship with Allah. There's no like, you hit the ceiling now. Okay, now I'm here. It doesn't get there. Even if you have nafs and if your soul is the one that's the highest, you don't feel like, okay, now I'm here. It never will happen to you.
Umar, I want to put the same question to you. What's your thoughts on this? What's the connection?
Yeah, I just remembered the saying by Jim Carrey, one of the actors. Yeah, he was saying that I hope that everyone becomes rich and to buy everything they want, and to know that this is not the answer. So subhanAllah, is maybe lots of people, they want to be like him. I want to be famous, I want to get money, I want to have everything. I think one of the reasons why he's not happy, or people, they don't become happy when they have money necessarily, because there's a difference between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is what the brother was talking about. Pleasure is like drugs. You have escalation. You need to go to something like more aggressive or more like harsh, like from mild drugs to harsh drugs and so on, or hard drugs. Yes, but happiness is different. Happiness maybe for a person is just to stay maybe for 1 hour, 2 hours reading a book that he likes, maybe reading something, and that doesn't maybe necessarily need to be rich. You don't need to be rich and you don't need to be famous. And you feel this happiness and you feel that you're so pleased with your life. I think this gets me to the last point I want to say. Keep your mind busy, because thoughts are racing. They are very fast. They're going in our brains like maybe thunder, you know. And in order to use this, we have to use these thoughts with something productive, something that we like. Not necessarily something that we have to do, like study and do things that obligations on. Something that you like to do with your brain, use this energy for your own good.
That's very interesting, actually. What I'm going to do now is just cover the last question, which is actually probably the most important question of the show, which is, what are steps that we can take to help those with mental issues and depression? Because this issue is completely ignored, especially in the Muslim communities throughout the world. Not just in the US, not in Europe, throughout the world. This is ignored. Many times, like Idris said before we started the program, before we went live, if somebody's mental, they blame it on the jinn. Like, oh, he's possessed. The guy's not possessed, the guy has mental issues, he needs help. You know, many times people just dismiss it, oh, the guy's crazy, he's possessed.
Hit you with the stick, right?
Exactly. But the issue isn't, the guy actually has problems, he needs help, he needs sincere help. So, Yusuf, if we can start with you, what are some steps that any individual watching this show or any community leader can take to establish, we could say, institutions or even anywhere where people with mental health issues can get help?
Chiefly is to understand the severity of mental health issues within our communities. You have to really understand it. For example, every 15 minutes in the United States of America, somebody's taking their life, somebody's committing suicide. So, as we're sitting here right now, there's somebody that's committing suicide.
4 people during the show.
4 people during the show. And it will continue and continue and continue, and Allah Ta'ala knows best, perhaps until Yawm al-Qiyamah. It may even get worse, because as times get harder. So to understand that, so the severity that as we're sitting enjoying our lives, there are people that are taking their lives constantly around the clock. So as our leaders and our community big figures, they shouldn't take it lightly, because sometimes they put imams in positions and they may have Islamic training, but they have no training in psychology. They have no training on the human condition, on the social conditions of a society. They may bring an imam from Saudi or from Egypt or from a foreign land to America, place in a masjid in the inner city of Philadelphia or New York, and he has no idea about the social condition, no idea about the drug issues, about the fatherlessness, the things that go on in the communities, and they say teach the people the aspects of wudu or something like this, or tawheed or whatever it is, but unable to correlate the teachings of Allah with the condition of the people. So there needs to be a sort of a way to educate the imams, and they should have credentials, or at least have people within circumference that can advise them according to the conditions and the mental health issues of what's going on, or direct them entirely to someone else and say, listen, this isn't my field. I'm an imam. I could tell you Qala Allah Ta'ala, Qala Rasul, but I can't tell you the intricacies of the human mind and the differences in acute depression or or serious depression or things like this. So it needs to be addressed properly in a correct way by our leaders and our figures in our community, and Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Okay, so we can summarize that point as understanding the issues at hand.
Absolutely.
In every community, we can say. Ahmed, what's your thoughts?
Yes, I'm going to answer this from a religious aspect, inshallah. The first thing is to know that troubles in your life that you endure patiently, this is your way to paradise. The Almighty Allah says, أَمْ حَسِبِتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ Do you think that you will enter paradise? وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ while such trials hasn't yet come to you as it came to the people who have passed on before you. What happened to them? They were touched. مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَاءُ They were touched by hardship and poverty, and they were shaken. وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ Till the Prophet and those who believed with him will say, مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ When is the help of Allah? Unquestionably, أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ The help of Allah is near. The second thing is to look at it in a positive way. And you have to be strong, as our Prophet ﷺ, as it was narrated about him, said, the strong believer is better and dearer to Allah than a weak one. And both are good. Adhere to everything which is beneficial for you. keep asking for Allah's help and do not refrain from it. In addition, he said, if you're afflicted in any way, do not say, if I had taken this or that steps that would have resulted in such and such, but say, Allah so determined and He did as He willed. Because the word if opened the gates of shaitan. So you have to believe in what's around you and leave everything to the best, which is Allah, and He'll help you with this, inshallah.
Okay, so we can summarize that point as putting your trust completely in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Idris, I'm going to come over to you. What's your thoughts? What are some steps?
I think I'm going to say a little known fact that a lot of people don't really realize. And I don't mean to contradict the brother, but they don't realize that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a cure for depression. He dealt with depression. He dealt with people who were crazy. We have everything in his sunnah. The problem is that they haven't looked at it from the right angle. In some, they have it, but it's not taught in the right angle to some of the imams. They're just taught on the basic level of, okay, this is your tarbiyah, this is your aqidah, this is your. They don't teach them on a higher level. We need a higher level training of delving into the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he dealt with people who were depressed. The depression isn't new. To say that we have something that's new and different here that they didn't have there, I think, in my opinion, is ludicrous. They had everything they had there, we have now, and sometimes worse. Sometimes we have it a lot better. They have solutions to it. We just have to have the people who are trained and aware and know how to address the issues. The sad reality is we don't have many people who, we have a scholar who's he's an alim in Quran and Hadith, but he doesn't know anything about people. Or you have a person who knows everything about the psychology of people. He doesn't know anything about Quran and Sunnah or the Seerah of Rasulullah. So we need to find a way to combine this and use it to our advantage, because it's there for us, for our taking advantage of.
So extracting solutions from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes.
Okay, Omar, I'm going to come to you and get your thoughts on this. What are some steps somebody can take?
Well, my point of view here is that the main reason for a person to become depressed is when he feels rejected. So the solution to this is to feel accepted. So if I'm depressed, for instance, if in my home they are just sick and tired of me and they don't want to deal with me, that's going to make things worse. But if I feel and psychology says this, if just one person gives me this hope and tells me, okay, I accept you as you are, don't worry, and you can really pass this phase that you are in. There is a consensus among psychologists, you are going to pass it.
Yeah, and there's even a story about an individual who was ready to commit suicide, and he went to the building where he was going to jump off, and he said, if one person cares about me, I'm not going to commit suicide. So he met a couple, and they handed him their cameras, and they said, take our picture. They took the picture, and he said, they didn't ask me how I was, so he jumped off the building. Fortunately he didn't pass away, but that's how we get the story. But he jumped off the building because he felt nobody asked him, how are you today? SubhanAllah.
Yes. And this is something I'd like to add about this. Some people get depressed because they think that people talk ill of them. They talk ill about them. People say about me, I'm a failure, for example, so I shouldn't live. I have to pass away. I have to die because people hate me around me. So what I'd like to tell you is that you're not better than Messenger ﷺ. When people said about him, he's a magician, they told about him that he's Sahir, yes. And even the Almighty Allah, the Jews told about him, the hands of Allah are chained are their hands. So if you look at your messenger, the best man who walked in the earth, and people rejected him, his people rejected him, and he was physically tortured, and everything he had in his life, you have to have him as your best example, and you'll get over this, inshallah.
Inshallah. And that's a very good point, because a simple way to do this is everybody, if they just cared about the people that were around them. Just the people that are around you, your neighbors, your family, just show them that you care. This is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which connects.
You'll find it.
Right. This is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is us being human beings, that we show our family that we care about them. And that's why Islam stresses Silatul Rahim. It stresses it. You notice it's everywhere in Islamic law. And this is one of the sunnahs that we left. Every time somebody thinks, okay, I want to bring back a sunnah, it's always something like, let's wear clothes that look like the Prophet ﷺ. What about his behavior? What about the way he treated his relatives? You know, this is a vital issue as well. Another thing that I want to mention is that this verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And what's interesting is that the beauty of the verse is commonly lost in translation. So very often you find that it is translated as, verily, with hardship comes ease. But we need to look at the Arabic to actually understand the precision of the Qur'an. If you look at the Arabic, let's break it down word by word. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, inna, which is verily, it's for tawqeed, to show
emphasis.
That, exactly, emphasis, right? Then He says ma'a, with, so verily with. Now the next part, the next two words is where we want to focus. The first word is al-usr. The second word is yusr. So one word does mean hardship, the other word does mean ease. But there's one difference between the two words. The first word has alif wa lam, which in Arabic is known as al-ma'rifah. Right? The second word doesn't have alif wa lam. So the first word is al-usr, alif wa lam in the beginning. The second word is just yusr, no alif wa lam, nakira. So the first word is definitive. The second word is indefinite. Meaning, al-usr is a specific problem or a specific issue. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, inna ma'a al-usr, that verily with a specific problem, a specific issue that you're facing, yusra. There are solutions.
Many solutions.
Many solutions. He didn't say al-yusra, that there will be a solution. He said yusra. So that's the beauty of this verse. Inna ma'al usri yusra. That verily, with that very specific issue that you're facing, there will be many solutions. And then he repeats the verse, Inna ma'al usri yusra. With that being said, just a last piece of advice, if each one of you guys want to give to the viewers. Go ahead, Yusuf, you can start off.
Yeah, this is something that my teacher taught me when I was having some concerns, you know, thinking about his worldly life. Two things he told me. One was that, he said, Yusuf, chase the deen and forget about the dunya. Worry about the akhirah. وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. Worry about the deen. He said, because if you chase the dunya, you'll lose the dunya and you'll lose your religion in the process of chasing the dunya. But if you chase the deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the dunya chase you because of His love. Secondly, he told me about fitna. You know, in Philadelphia, we always had this word fitna. Man, don't start no fitna, you call it fitna, right? And we understand it to mean trouble, right? But fitna is a trial. And I learned later in life that fitna was also from the word used in metallurgy, how they weighed gold, how they would, you know, burn the excess off of the gold. So if you would like to be pure gold, it is not without trial and tribulation, without fire. You have to go through fire to be gold. So whenever I go through pains and trials and tribulations in my life, I always think, man, Allah is making me gold. I'm about to shine because of the process that Allah Ta'ala is putting me through. So to always have hopeful, to change the perspective of the situation, as you mentioned earlier.
So boy, you shining now.
Yeah, see, because I've been through some things.
Ahmed, I want to come over to you. What's your piece of advice?
Yes, of course, I have a lot of stressors around people, especially young people who have social, academic, and many problems. And the only solution, or the best solution I would like to give them, is never to give up. Never give up, because if you just look at the troubled water and it keeps flowing in a big rock, it can make a big hole in this rock, because just it keeps flowing. And the same for you. If you just keep trying, you will get what you want, inshallah.
All right, that's Idris. I'm going to come to you. Last piece of advice, inshallah.
For me, I would say the first thing is cleanse your heart with sincerity. You know, only you and Allah know how if you're sincere. Cleanse it with sincerity. And the second thing is find ways to build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that only you and Allah know. If maybe this is tahajjud at night, maybe this is a private sadaqah. You need to find ways through the sunnah of building a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you build this relationship, you'll be strong by yourself and you won't need anyone else, and what happens to you won't destroy you. This relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the thing that holds you. If you can build this, you have to start somewhere. Start small. Find what touches you. Everyone's different. Maybe sadaqah touches you more than and salah touches me. Find what touches you and build upon it. But my advice would do this. If you don't do this, you're going to have a lot of stress and problems and not know how to deal with it. If you can do that, I think your life will turn out to be a lot easier and better, no matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys are giving like wonderful advice. The important part for us is to actually act upon these things. That make sure we don't just hear it and it comes out the other year, that we actually do these things. Omar, I'm going to come to you. What's your piece of advice for the viewers?
I just want to say to any person who feels that he lost hope because of failure, just if you fall 7 times, stand up 8. That's it.
One last thing I would say to add to mine is that when you're doing these things, do them and find something to do that's private. Nothing will cleanse your heart, nothing will make you understand when it's something private between you and Allah. Cleanse it and find a way to make it sincere. Don't let anyone know what you're doing, keep it between you and Allah and build upon it. If you can do that, I'm telling you, you will see the difference.
All right, that brings us to the end of our wonderful conversation we had here today. So I want to end off by thanking you guys for joining me here on my panel. Once again, we'd like to see you guys, inshallah, on Huda many more times. Dear viewers, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you guys try to have these sort of conversations in your local community. And you can even start in your home. If you're a parent, start with your kids, your family, your husband, your wife, get them together and try to have these sort of conversations, because it is an actual issue that faces the Muslim community throughout the globe. So with that being said, don't forget to check out our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and until next time, may God bless us all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, Allah. I'm calling your name, Allah. I call you, I need you, Allahu Akbar, Allah. Your mercy is great.